Hi, I'm Lita Liepins.
And I'm Jim Gordon.
And welcome to another edition of Our City Tonight.
Well, folks, if you are a regular viewer of Our City Tonight, you know that we do like to pride ourselves on shooting pretty much all on location. But this is one of the first shows we've ever done in our 5-year history that will be done pretty much all at the studio of our production partner, Hubcast Media.
And we're very excited. We have some very interesting inside business segments coming out.
That's right. And we're also, for the first time, going to go way down to New Zealand to talk wine with some very interesting people. That's all coming up after you look at this. Well, as we mentioned, and I've got my glasses on because we have notes, we're going to go to some wine talk right now. And Lita and I are going all the way down to New Zealand, courtesy of Skype here at Hubcast Studios. We want to welcome the Marlborough production winemaker for Villa Maria. Of course, we all enjoy their wine, but we're going down to Marlborough, that great region, to talk to Catherine. And I got to get this last name right, Catherine. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Yankovic.
Very perfect, thank you.
Oh, wow. I will not talk anymore during this interview. I got the name right. Anyway, welcome to our show and welcome from New Zealand.
Thank you very much for having me, and good morning to Canada and British Columbia. So it's very exciting to be on your show, and especially as we have here started a beautiful morning in New Zealand. We've got a very wonderful autumn morning. It's really golden weather here, so it's been a pleasure to share the wines with you tonight.
And going right into that, Catherine, we're big fans of New Zealand wine. You're in the Marlborough region on the South Island. Tell us a little bit about the specialty wines that are grown there.
Well, New Zealand really has just popped onto the wine map very recently, about 40 years ago. And Villa Maria has sort of really shaped the history of New Zealand wine. Back in the day, in the 1960s, there was no wine production to talk about. So our founder, Sir George Vistanage, has started with a handful of grapes and planted the first grapes in New Zealand. And fast forward, we are now in New Zealand and really renowned around the world to make this great wine, and probably most well noticed for our Sauvignon Blanc, which is about 85% of our production from New Zealand wines. So New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is all about crisp fruit flavors. It is about these passion fruit and green crisp flavors that are coming out, paired with zinging acidity. It's bright and fresh and lively, and it makes your taste buds sing. But also, what most people probably don't know very well is that we also grow other grape varieties, and one of them is really exceptional Pinot Noir here.
You know, I said to you before we came on that we've got some wine on the table here, and I am really excited to try the Pinot Noir because I've certainly been with Lita and other of our friends many times where we're all doing the Sauv Blanc. You've got a very distinctive Sauv Blanc, but talk a little more, as you just mentioned, about the Pinot Noir. Tell us about your reds.
Look, Pinot Noir is one of my most favorite grape varieties, and I really like it because it is probably the most perfumed red grape that's out there, and it does exceptionally well in New Zealand and especially in Marlborough. We're getting here fruit flavors. They're all in that lovely red cherry spectrum, cranberries. It is incredibly perfumed. We get flavors of roses and violets in there, a hint of sort of savory olives, and then we get this lovely structured silky tannins that accompany the wine and just linger on, and there's so much flavor. It's such an giving wine, and yeah, it's just an absolute pleasure to taste.
And Catherine, you got involved in the wine industry to sort of fund your travel, and I love your story. It's pretty exciting. You landed in New Zealand, beautiful area that you're at. They have other wines too that they're bringing out, and can you tell us a little bit about those ones as well?
Sure. So we're not about all of Sauvignon, although it is our mainstay, it is our bread and butter, but yeah, it is our Pinot Noirs. We're doing wonderful Chardonnays that really reflect the region where they're grown. So not only in Marlborough we're growing Chardonnay, we also have vineyards in Hawke's Bay, we've got vineyards in Auckland and in Gisborne, and they all make really quite distinctive wines. And it's really amazing to try through and taste the difference in terroir and the difference the region makes. So, but apart from that, I think we're lesser known, but I think it's very worthwhile sort of spreading out and dipping your hands in other grape varieties and explore what New Zealand has to offer. We've got great Pinot Gris, we've got Rieslings, we've got very lovely reds from Hawke's Bay, so amazing, really flavorful Syrahs, great structured Cabernet Sauvignon. So we've got a lot that the consumer might not know that New Zealand has got that on offer.
Kat, we appreciate you joining us. Of course, as you mentioned, you're heading into your winter, and I always tell people you're a day ahead, 5 hours behind. So thank you for joining us. And what's great is that you mentioned Hawke's Bay, and we're going to mention that in a few seconds, as that's where we're going next. But more information on Villa Maria, you can go to villamaria.co.nz. Kat, thank you for joining us from Marlborough. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
That's great. Wow, fantastic to have her there. And as we mentioned, we're going to go from the Marlborough region on the South Island to Hawke's Bay on the North Island. That's coming up later in Our City Tonight.
Hi, I'm Todd Talbot, and you are watching Our City Tonight.
Well, we're back with another Inside Business segment, and with what's going on in the world right now, of course, we are trying to tailor slightly these segments to talk about some of the great things that are going on during these unprecedented times in which we're living. We're here at the Chop Value Micro Factory. We want to thank them for inviting us, but we're here with a woman with a wonderful story. It's Steph Sharp. She's the co-founder and CEO of 3DQ Systems. Steph, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
You are quite welcome. I cannot wait to get into this story, but first tell us about you guys are working together in a community and where we are right now.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people have come together in Vancouver to help the frontline workers with personal protective equipment like face shields. And Chop Value, who does this beautiful woodwork for homeware and decor, they make all of these out of chopsticks, so really sustainable. They have equipment we need to help make face shields, and we have the 3D printing to make the headbands, and they can make the clear visors. So we decided to move in to their space while we're collaborating on this.
That's great. Let's talk a bit now about 3DQ Systems. For people who may not know this, your story, which is a relatively young story, we should mention you came through the Entrepreneurship UBC's Venture Creation Program in 2019. Tell us about what you and your co-founder, Matteo, are doing. What a great story.
Yeah, so Matteo actually has invented a way of automating 3D printing so that you no longer have to have a person go over to the printer and remove parts. And what that means is that we are able to print parts like these, for example, sideways. Mm-hmm. We can actually print them like this, and it'll stick to the print bed. And then at the end, he just releases it with gravity and prints the next part. And so we don't need people, we just keep printing parts.
And with, as I mentioned off the top, with what we're going through right now as society and the world right now, is a lot of companies like yourself are stepping up and kind of saying, we have some things we could do to help. And this is where I really get fascinated by your story, because talk about what you're doing to help those people who need the help on the front lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3D printing is very flexible. We can print plastic parts and goods, components for all kinds of things for COVID. So we have, for instance, ear savers. This is for frontline workers to put loop their masks around so they won't get sore.
Yeah, because tell that, people don't realize that a lot of frontline workers are getting, you said, blisters and chafing from
wearing the masks for so many hours.
Yeah.
So this just takes the pressure off. And actually, we at 3DQ have developed this storage system that can be doubled as a sterilizer. So you can put your sterilizing solution in, it drains out, and then people can come and get their sterilized ear savers. So products like this, we're able to turn around very quickly with 3D printing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things too is also that you're talking to people about how this stuff can all be done in-house. You're not waiting for a shipment coming from somewhere on the planet. This can all be done right here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, we had a conversation with the federal government on Saturday, this past Saturday, and they were saying, well, we need swabs. There's a shortage of test swabs for testing for COVID. Can you make some? So Monday morning, I asked our guys, can we make some? They came up with 6 designs. We shipped them to the lab for testing on Tuesday.
And talk about the quantity too. I mean, I'm looking around at I was reading your bio about how you were in a unique position to produce 10,000 to 20,000 headbands for face shields and mask extenders per week.
Yeah.
Right here in our lovely city of Vancouver.
Actually, yeah. So these guys, we can do probably more like 20 or 30,000 now. We've optimized the design. Swabs, we can do 10,000 a day.
10,000 a day.
Yeah.
And
So, depends on the size of the part.
yeah.
Bigger parts take longer.
Can you mention this product here too?
Yeah,
If
this
we
is-
can get the shot of that.
This is from another Vancouver company that's doing some really great stuff for COVID. They actually make electric generators to produce, and they're portable.
Yeah.
Super green, and their generators will be used to power ventilators, the extra ventilators that are needed, because of course hospital electric systems are overloaded with all the extra
Right.
machines. So
I must ask you too about, sometimes I hear people talking my age about, oh my God, we're handing the world over to the youth of today. I got to talk about your co-founder who was at a very young age and has done some spectacular work. Tell us about your co-founder, Mateo.
yeah, so Mateo is, he actually invented this system 4.5 years ago. He had 3D printers at home, and he was producing all these kind of cool things and would take them to school, and everybody would say, oh, can you make this for me? Can you make that for me? And he got really frustrated because he would put something on to print in the morning. It would take a couple of hours, but he'd be at school all day.
Yeah.
And then he'd come home and he'd have to scrape it off and print another thing, and then it would sit. And he had all these things he wanted to make. So he said, well, there must be a way that the printer can run by itself. And so that's what he invented, is a way for the printer to run by itself 24/7 when he's not around.
And am I right? You're 19?
19 now.
19, well
yeah.
done. I like what you said too, is at that age they don't know that there's an answer no. They
Yes.
just they go to it. Hey, before we wrap up, where can people find out more about your fabulous company?
So we're at 3dq.com, 3dque.com, and obviously on LinkedIn. So we always love to hear from people.
That is great, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that like to hear from you guys and all the work you're doing. It's Steph Sharp. She's the co-founder and CEO of 3DQ Systems. We also want to thank the folks at Chop Value Micro Factory. That is where we are right now, and this is some of the fantastic work. So I love the community that you guys have really developed here. And again, thank you for all the work you are doing during this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
Yeah,
Steph Sharp.
appreciate
She's part of the latest Inside Business segment here on Our City Tonight.
Hi, I'm Natalie Volz. I'm an actor, writer, and director, and I'm hanging out with these two cuties from Our City Tonight.
Cuties.
Yeah.
Earlier in the show, we were in the Marlborough region of New Zealand, and now we've gone to Hawke's Bay, which is another one of the main wineries of Villa Maria, and we're joined by Ollie Powery. He is the company's viticulturist. Welcome, Ollie.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Hey, thank you for being outside, Ollie. That's fantastic. As Lita mentioned, we were on the South Island. Now we're in the North Island in the Hawke's Bay area. Let's talk a little bit about what you do, because you're in the middle of harvest right now, are you not?
We've actually just completed the harvest in the last few days, Jim, but my role is the viticulturist for Villa Maria, so I'm really in charge of overseeing all of the vineyards throughout New Zealand that Villa Maria has, and just making sure that we're producing the quality grapes that we need for our wines that we export all around the world.
And Ollie, compare working, I know you did a stint in France, in the Rhone Valley. Can you compare working there with where you are now in Hawke's Bay in New Zealand?
Yeah, sure. I loved my experience in France. I think, coming back home to New Zealand, it was pretty quickly apparent that one of the key things here is that we're not bound by a lot of sort of rules and regulations around grape growing and winemaking in terms of what we plant where. So we really have the opportunity to innovate with new varieties, test things out in different climates and different soil types without being sort of governed by what we plant and where. But in terms of viticulture, I think, for me, it's been interesting. Initially, I was really stunned by the old world winemaking and viticulture, but really, as I've sort of got more experience, I'm falling back more and more on that experience I gained in France.
And Ollie, can you talk a bit about the changes in the making of wine? I'm looking at some of the things you had said about making it more sustainable, enhancing the land and local environment, organic. Talk a bit about that, but also on top of that, we've got this recent COVID pandemic. How has that been as a challenge for you guys and your team?
Yeah, sure, Jim. I might just quickly start with the COVID situation because it's so fresh in my mind, but it was only a month ago that Jacinda Ardern, our Prime Minister, put New Zealand into full lockdown, but granted the New Zealand wine industry the privilege of still being able to continue to bring our harvest in. So as you can imagine, once she announced the lockdown, I was almost breathless that day until we heard that we could actually continue to harvest because we had a lot at stake. We only had about 10% of our harvest in at that time. Since then, it's been a big change because at Villa Maria, we really bring our viticulture and winemaking teams together at harvest. But this year, we've actually had to separate the team because we've had to keep our social distancing. We've also wanting to keep our teams separate so that if one person gets sick in one team, that it doesn't end up infecting someone in the winery team. Because during the harvest, we're 24/7, and we just couldn't risk having that, having people getting sick. So fortunately, I can say that we didn't have any illnesses in the vineyard or winery. So we've been able to progress as normal in this beautiful weather that we're having.
And Ollie, can you tell us a little bit about the amazing documentary Vintage?
Yeah, sure. That was just 12 months ago. We had a film crew here from America, which was another interesting challenge thrown into the harvest times. So it was all about trying to capture what happens over here in New Zealand in the vineyards and the wineries at harvest to give people a behind-the-scenes experience of what goes on. Because I think a lot of people, when they buy a bottle of wine and have a glass of wine at home, just don't have that impression of how much hard work has gone in throughout the year, but really at harvest when the intensity of what goes on to get the grapes into the wineries in a short space of time.
I think Lita and I were both commenting on when we were watching the documentary, if people think making wine is a glamorous business, they are sadly mistaken. You guys at this, especially this time of the year, you don't see your families much. So I want to recommend people go see that documentary. You can find it at most of the various outlets online and everything like that. And
what are you holding in your hands there, Ollie?
I just found a rogue bunch that we managed to leave behind, but this is a bunch of Merlot grapes. In the film, you'll see that I eat a lot of grapes during the movie because really to capture the flavors at the best possible time to harvest the grapes, we're out all the time just plucking the grapes off, really tasting for the flavor, the ripeness in the fruit, to really make sure we're getting the fruit in at exactly the right time.
Between you and Catherine, my mouth is watering and I can't wait to actually try these amazing wines that you guys have provided.
Right.
Ollie, I want to thank you for waking up early for us. I know you're a winemaker, so this is not really waking up early, but thank you for joining us on the show today, all the way from Hawke's Bay on the North Island in New Zealand. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you guys and your team hopefully one day in Vancouver, because there's a lot of New Zealand wine tastings in our city.
Thanks, Jim, and we wish you all the very best over there. And keep safe. And I'll just step back so you can see the vista in the vineyard. We've actually got some sheep in here at the moment, just grazing down the grass. So the grapes have all gone and the sheep moving for a few months. So here you go, guys. Have a nice look.
Very nice. Thank you, Ollie.
Oh, beautiful.
Thanks, guys.
More information. Thanks. More information on Villa Maria. You can go to, of course, villamaria.co.nz.
NZ, yes. Well, that's awesome, and we certainly look forward to trying out some of the wares.
everybody, I'm Don Alder, and you're watching Our City Tonight.
Well, we have a very interesting business on our Inside Business segment today. I want to introduce Julia Chung. She is the co-founder of AdminSlayer Services. This is a virtual business service. Now, Julia, I think it's just fascinating that this business was started almost 5 years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about what prompted you to start something like this?
Well, mostly AdminSlayer got started because I needed it more than anything else. I have my own financial planning business, and I needed somebody to work with me. And it was kind of in startup mode. It was in the first couple of years, and I really needed a certain type of support, but I needed it to be super efficient as far as cost and implementation. And so I hired Shannon Cassidy, who is now the Chief Operating Officer of AdminSlayer. She became my virtual assistant. And I hired Kristen Merriman to do my marketing, and Tracy Yerkin to manage my operations and my systems. And we were able to launch and set off my business really, really quickly, really, really professionally. And I thought, this is great. I've got a virtual team. They work well. They work in a way that they like, which was from home. And then other business started asking me, well, how did you get such a great team? And I explained the system to them. And then they started saying, well, I want a team like that. And then other administrators and professionals that I know started saying, well, where do I get a job like Shannon's and Tracy's and Kristen's? And I thought, oh, well, that actually kind of sounds like a business. So we launched AdminSlayer in 2015 and started building teams around small businesses.
Now, as you call them slayers, I love that. You've got little cute bios up of everybody, but not to be fooled. These women and men are super, super efficient at what they do. How is this so relevant right now when businesses are finding themselves they have to satellite office and work from home and find people to fill in these positions? Your slayers are scattered all over British Columbia.
Actually, all over the country. So we've got slayers all the way from the coast of Nova Scotia right over to BC. We've got people in Saskatchewan and Ontario, pretty much every province. We don't have anybody in the territories quite yet, but I'm sure that'll come. But yeah, it definitely has felt like maybe we were a little psychic. I mean, that wasn't the intention, but we are work from home people. We can work part-time, we can work full-time. We build professional teams around small businesses. I like to think about it as sort of like crowdsourcing that professional back office. Like if you hired each one of these people to work full-time for your business, it would cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. And yet instead we have this entire team that provides their expertise to a number of small businesses. So it spreads the cost, and they get to work in the places that they are best as part of a team that's really supported to them, and businesses get supported by professionals that they otherwise really couldn't afford.
Now, it really is a brilliant business model, I have to say that. But moving forward, what are your next steps as we know that we're entering into a new norm? What would you say the next steps AdminSlayer Services is taking to deal with the new norm?
Well, mostly it is about, first of all, continuing the path that we're on, making sure that we're supporting our team really, really well, because of course, at the end of the day, they're just like everybody else. They're parents, they have partners, they live in the community, they're affected by this crisis personally, just like everybody else. But we're already really, really well set up with the work from home programs and with online services and cybersecurity and that sort of thing, that we can support small businesses. So as those small businesses are often, unfortunately, in situations where they're shrinking, they're maybe not able to afford full-time staff the way that they've wanted to do it in the past, we're there to step in for the short term, for the long term, to really help them survive this crisis and move on to the next level.
Well, excellent information. How can viewers find out a bit more information about the services?
Come find us at adminslayer.com, and we're on social media at adminslayer on pretty much every single channel you can find. We share lots of great information. We even have a business resources page that provides small businesses with all kinds of free stuff, from access to financing and free resources and other information for crisis management. So come on by the website. Even if you don't hire us, there's really good information there.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. Julia Chung, the co-founder of AdminSlayer Services. Thanks for being on Our City Tonight.
Thank you.
Well, it's time to wrap up this edition of Our City Tonight.
And before we go, we want to thank all of our frontline essential service workers who are keeping our community together and running so smoothly.
Well said, Lita. We also want to thank our production partners, Hubcast Media, for doing all the technical work. We appreciate them guiding us and helping us adapt to what's going on right now in our world. We should also remind you to check us out online, of course, Facebook and Instagram, and you can look at past episodes on YouTube. I'm Jim Gordon.
I'm Lita Leapins.
We'll see you on the next edition of Our City Tonight.
Sponsorship for the Health and Wellness segment is provided by Enerex Botanicals Limited.
Inside Real Estate segments are brought to you by Team Kerr, real estate advice for life. Outdoor wear for Jim and Lita provided by Helly Hansen, alive since 1877.
Some of my clothing has been provided by Blushing Boutique, located in downtown Vancouver and online. Youngblood Mineral Cosmetics provided by Soluzione Spa Products.